Hi, welcome to Mental Health Monday. I'm Heidi Gaiman from HeidiGaiman.com, where we talk about mental health, genuine relationships, and Jesus. So today we are going to start a new series for Mental Health Monday, and this one is called Mental Health Road Trip. Mental Health Road Trip. And this is a field trip, if you will, that we get to take together to advocate for mental health, to try to end the stigma. And so we are currently in an online Bible study session at HeidiGaiman.com on roads and roads in scripture and where God meets us on our roads. And so we are going to utilize that and take this as an opportunity for 6 weeks to talk about road tripping, to basically get out there, to do things in our lives that actually change the atmosphere of mental health in our culture, in our nation, in our homes, communities, maybe even in our internal selves. And so wherever you have it. But I'm going to ask you, will you road trip with me? Will you road trip with me? Will you go out there and help advocate for mental health? Sometimes that sounds intimidating, like, wow, you don't need to start a blog about mental health like I myself have. Instead, just let it sit for these 6 weeks. Tune in for this road trip on mental health and maybe sort through for yourself what God is calling you to do. Maybe that's just to be a better friend. We're going to learn some tools for that. But maybe that also is just maybe to change some thoughts in your mind of what you thought mental health was and what it looked like. Maybe that's just to have more resources in your pocket to be able to bring out when you need them or someone else needs them. And maybe that's just to celebrate good mental health and wellness, and also to celebrate where you've come from. We're going to do all those things together. So week 1 today is meeting people where they are. Today we're going to meet people where they are for better mental health. This is such a huge component of it, and it really is layer 1 to end the stigma for mental health. Just what do people need? And what if I stop trying to change them into something else? What would that look like? And so just meeting people where they are says this thing that I've had professors in almost every class I've ever been in say this out loud, but I think it's really helpful that people do the best they can with what they have in a given moment. So that means that we might make really poor choices. That means that we might not be doing what looks like is good for our health and well-being or the health and well-being of others. But at the root of things, even in our selfishness and our sin, we really do try our best. We just don't have what we need, whether that's God's word, whether that is the support that we need, whether that's, medication and treatment, whatever that is, to believe that people are trying. And this is a very compassionate vantage point. Do I believe that in original sin? Yes. Do I believe that mankind is sinful from birth? Yes. But I think some of our vantage point of that has trumped our ability to be compassionate with people. And know that we're all walking this hard road together, that we are all equally broken. So when I look at you and your brokenness isn't more broken than mine, even though I don't understand your vantage point of brokenness, even though I don't understand what you're doing in your life and to yourself and to other people sometimes, but meeting you where you're at. So we are all at different levels of maturity at different times. We're all at different places in our faith walks, and whether we have faith or not faith, there's a huge spectrum of that. Maybe we also are at different places of understanding ourselves and our personalities and our growth-oriented place. So that's part of meeting people where they're at. So there's 3 basic questions I want you to think of for yourself when you think about meeting people where they're at. Number 1 is, who do they need? So if you encounter a person and they have some mental health stuff, like we all do, number 1, that's a huge vantage point change, is the fact that we all have mental health. It's part of all of us. Sometimes it looks really great, and sometimes it needs more tending. Sometimes we have genetic problems all loaded up in our DNA, and it comes out in different ways that we can or cannot control. Excuse me. Um, but who do they need? So who do they need? Is that you as a friend, or when someone comes to you and you're concerned for their mental health, stay in your lane, I guess. Do they need a professional? How can you help them get there? But just asking yourself, who does this person need? Do they just need support? Half the time, I mean, a large portion of the time, that's a huge part of the answer to the question is who do they need? They need care. They need a friend. They need affection. Also, as Christians, we know that they need God. Like we know that they need Jesus. And that's true for Christians and non-Christians, right? We know that Jesus changes everything. So who do they need? Then how can we begin to help them like encounter that person? Not help them see it, not like force their face into the Bible or anything or into a mental health resource, but instead, how can we help them encounter that? Whether that's telling our own story, whether that is just listening and sitting with them, but who do they need is a good question. The second question is, what conversations do they need? What conversations do they need? And so this one usually starts with kindness and compassion. People need kindness and compassion in their conversations. They don't necessarily need a lot of judgment, right? We're always going to choose compassion over judgment if we are going to go road trip out there to advocate for better mental health. Compassion over judgment. That doesn't mean that we exchange truth, right? We are going to speak truth into one another's lives, but that truth is always coupled with love. Truth with love. And so what kind of conversation do they need? Do they need a truth-telling conversation? Are they at that place? Do you have the relationship that you can give that? Or is that for someone else? Is this a love-filled conversation? Every conversation should contain love in some way, shape, or form and another, even the ones that have the most accountability and discipline. So what kind of conversation do they need? Also, is this opinion or fact in the conversation? Being careful of when we're like kind of spouting off things. And I probably do this worse than anyone because I think I know. As a professional, I'm like, well, I know the answer to that. And I try to give it. And sometimes I need to be honest about what I know and I don't know. And so sorting through the opinions and the facts of mental health and checking ourselves when we're having a conversation with someone. What does depression really look like? What does anxiety really look like? And what am I saying that is just kind of stuff I've heard or opinions? And then what do I know about mental health? What have I researched? And what is truth in Jesus Christ? Those things are really important. And do they need answers from me, or do they need me to just continue asking questions? Because that goes a long way. The question-driven conversation helps keep it more toward compassion rather than judgment. So questions, and more questions. And that really helps people most of the time when people, who do they need? Often it's support. The best way you can support them is just helping them sort through it and find out, for themselves. That's part of the road trip is like, we don't always have a destination. We're on this journey together, right? Journey to better mental health, journey to genuine relationships and just knowing one another. So the last question is, what resources do they need? What resources do they need? And I mean, I want to preface this with like, you can't make anyone do anything. That's really important. It is also not your job to save them. That is Jesus's job. That's Jesus's job. Your job is to sit beside them. And so the thing about resources and getting to good mental health resources is that it feels very vulnerable. And so relationships is where we do that best. If they are coming to you or if you yourself need resources, that is a place of vulnerability, but that means that that's a place of God's soil. If you think about the seeds going in the soil, the vulnerable soil that can accept the seed and help it grow and stuff instead of be all rocky and cagey, that's good stuff. That's where compassion is at and meets, God's restoration. And so what resources do they need? What kind of professionals are out there? Sometimes just helping people sort through resources is a huge way that we end the mental health stigma. Sharing resources we have used before, being honest about struggling to find resources or struggling to find the one that fit us best. Also, just identifying, doing a Google search of your area beside that person or helping them do that can be really empowering. We don't do things for people. That's not healthy mental health. However, aiding and walking alongside sometimes means that we will do the Googling and be like, oh, you know what? I found this thing. I don't know if it's helpful. If you don't want to use it, like, I'm not offended. Again, compassion, not judgment. But, go ahead and do a little bit of the searching to just like take that edge off, trying to just get into that, I guess. That invites them on the road trip of mental health along with us too. So be careful of advice. Be careful when you're just like, oh, you know what I did once? You know what you should do? Like, careful. Do you hear the judgment in that compared to compassion? So, like, good questions are, what has worked for you before? Who have you talked to? What do you think you need? Just asking those questions. That's much better. Can you share advice? Of course. I mean, advice in itself isn't inherently evil. But be honest. This is my advice. Like, it might be good, it might be bad, take it for what it's worth. Those kinds of phrases are really helpful and make it kind of a compassionate vantage point. What's worked for me, I don't know if it would work for you. I'm not telling you what to do. Just, allowing dignity and freedom in that is really helpful. Do offer on this mental health road trip food and friendship. Food and friendship. I mean, this really ends the stigma of mental health. More compassion, less judgment, but speaking that in physical action of showing up as a friend, being there when it's hard. Boundaries are important. That doesn't mean you're not showing up, but at the same time, taking the opportunity where you can show up, even if you need to set boundaries in other places. And so the physical thing of food, I think, is a really big one. And mental health first aid has this whole thing about how we don't bring casseroles for mental illness, right? But who can we honor with our time and with gifts of food that are comforting and just really speak love over people? I do think, since we do that for other life problems, other physical health problems, if we can do that in mental health issues and in relational issues and stuff, that is going to change the stigma, because we're responding to life problems the same, whether it's mental health or whether it's something else entirely. So that is trip one. That is like a stage one of mental health road trip. The question I have for you today is, what topics do you think people wish we would bring up more often? What do people need us to be talking about on this, mental health road trip? How do you think we can change the community and the culture for mental health by bringing up conversation? What topics do you think people would like us to talk about a little bit more? And I'd love to hear from you in the comments about that. And I'll also have it on my Snapchat for today if you want to respond to me there. You can also respond on the comments on YouTube, of course. I do want to make a Mental Health Monday announcement, is that we did not get to cover adolescent and teen play in our play series that we just finished, which you can find archived on the YouTube channel if you're interested. So we're going to do a bonus Mental Health Monday. Bonus Mental Health Monday. And we are going to do it next Monday. So you will have not one, but 2 editions of Mental Health Monday next Monday, back to back. So if you want to get in on that play for adolescents and teens, show up next Monday. We'll do mental health road trip. The topic for next week is change and transition, changing the stigma by talking about change and transition. And then we will turn the video off and come back and do play for adolescents and teens. All right, it's good to be with you guys always. Thanks for joining me on this mental health road trip. I feel like we need road trip music or something. I will see you next week, and you can always find me at HeidiGaiman.com, and you can find me on Facebook, Heidi Gaiman Writes, Instagram, Heidi Gaiman, and Snapchat, Heidi Adventures, as well as on the Heidi Gaiman Writes YouTube channel. I'll see you next time.